The Taliban are really basically waiting for the United States to withdraw and then they will take over. So we will be back to 98, 99 when Taliban were ruling Afghanistan and Al Qaeda was building its base and training its fighters. That is what is going to happen to Afghanistan if the United States were to withdraw. Syria is a much more complicated situation. There are many players in Syria. The one side or one coalition is Bashar al-Assad and his regime and his allies, which are Russia, Iran, and Iran's proxy Hezbollah. And then you have the rebels who are completely diminished right now and not very well coordinated, but nevertheless, Syrians, predominantly Sunni opposition, which is still hoping to establish a regime by ousting Bashar al Assad. And then you have ISIS, a terrorist group in waiting. It had established a terrorist country, but now its fighters have dispersed, but it will take them very little time to regroup and acquire more territory if there is no major power combating them. And then, of course, you will have Turkey. Uh, and these groups all have various different interests, and they're all motivated by national interest and self interest. At the moment, the Turks are more interested in reducing the power and influence and territorial control of the Syrian Kurds and the Iraqi Kurds. They're not interested in fighting ISIS, even though they seem to say that. I do not see Turkey becoming the bulwark against ISIS that that President Erdogan has promised that Turkey would become if America were to withdraw. Turkey does not have the capacity or the resources to combat ISIS the way the United States has been doing all these years. So that's one issue. Russia and Iran have not really directly engaged with ISIS. They are more interested in consolidating Bashar al Assad's control over most of Syria and also ensuring that the Assad regime survives. So, who is going to fight ISIS if the United States were to go? And that is the question that President Trump has to really answer. And that is something that Americans have to worry. The fear is that if the United States were to withdraw from Syria militarily, then a mini ISIS Daesh state may emerge, which would be essentially a giant terrorist training camp, which will attract extremists from all over the world, train them, give them battle experience, and probably send them back to their countries. And the possibility that another 9/11 would happen subsequently increases exponentially. So that is the biggest threat and fear of this policy of the United States if it were to be implemented of withdrawal. It's not that the US has a significant military presence in Syria, but the intelligence and the air domination that the US maintains in the Syrian regime is critical to fighting ISIS. South Asia, Afghanistan will become an extremist state. I do not expect the Taliban to come to power and just focus on domestic governance and providing good governance. They are an ideologically driven group, and their foreign and domestic policy will be more focused on realizing ideological goals of Islamization with their interpretation of Islam, which is not very appealing, truly speaking. And if the impact of the US withdrawal from Syria will be traumatic in the region, Israel is also worried and is already beginning to engage in Syrian affairs. So it is quite possible that we might see emerging spheres of influence in Syria where there will be pockets where Turkey will dominate and pockets where Israel will dominate and pockets where Iran will dominate and Russia. So it'll be like Germany after World War II, where there were four quarters, and that you might see that Syria will be divided territorially, at least in a de facto fashion, under control of several different powers. Unfortunately, I do not want to look too far into the future and speculate whether Syrian territorial integrity will survive this current crisis or not. But one thing will certain, it'll become the epicenter of instability in the region. Not only will it continue to keep the Arab world and the Middle East unstable, But with the opportunities that it will provide to groups like ISIS to thrive, it will potentially become the epicenter, the source of all instability in the region, with implications for Europe particularly.